Hello folks, and welcome back to the show that today features the biggest battle of bulging biceps in the history of verses. No, it's not going to be these little water pistols competing. It's the Bazooka Show, because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger taking on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Both fellows have a history of performing well on this here program, but now they find themselves faced with their toughest opponent ever, even tougher than Satan, who did fall at the hands of Arnold, but The Rock punched an earthquake. So this is going to be a fun one, kids. In one corner, you have a multi-time Mr. Olympian champion from Austria who dabbles in movies when he's not running the state of California. In the other, a famous wrestler whose penchant for beating up baddies is almost as potent as his sense of smell. Neither Arnold nor Dwayne are used to losing very much, so someone is in for a surprise.
Come on, gold medal. You afraid I'm gonna kick your little mermaid ass all over this course in front of all these people?
Tell me what I must do.
Here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer / audience score. Round 3, iconic moments. Round 4, franchisability. And then we'll do a wild card round that The Rock hopes involves giant crocodile taming. With these two behemoths, nothing is out of the realm of possibility except a tie. Dwayne Johnson has already defeated his good buddy Kevin Hart in a previous episode of Versus, and the Terminator once shredded RoboCop on this very program. But now, they're going head-to-head. It's the T-800 versus Hercules, Conan taking on Hobbs, and most violently, it's going to be Kindergarten Cop brawling against the Tooth Fairy. Let's get it on.
I don't want to do this!
Round 1, box office. If ever there lived two dudes who didn't need to be on a giant screen to look big, it's Arnold and Dwayne, but their dreams of movie stardom wouldn't budge, and as a result, they become two of the biggest A-list attractions in Hollywood history. The Rock is one of the very few movie stars today that can open a film all by himself, and if an existing movie collection needs a boost, he's been called franchise Viagra.
I scratch my back with a whale's dick!
But the action star template was molded most notably by Schwarzenegger, who came into prominence in Tinseltown in the late 1970s and would go on to be the most dominant force in film for well over a decade, maybe 2 decades. Since Arnold's box office peak occurred 30 years before Dwayne's, we've adjusted for inflation, meaning that yes, Arnold's numbers are in fact on steroids. But it's legal here. I'm the commissioner of the show, and I okayed it. Mainly because the other guy's nickname is Viagra, and I'm pretty sure that's a performance-enhancing drug. But even with a level playing field, Arnold might be marching uphill. Most of his biggest flicks were rated R. I know, because I snuck into some of them. Hi, one for, Beethoven, please? Despite Arnold's rapid rise to movie stardom in the 1980s, only 2 of his top 10 all-time grossers are from that decade. The bulk of his biggest box office beast was in the 1990s, including the best of the best, Terminator 2 Judgment Day at $457 million domestically, followed by True Lies at $328 million, and Total Recall, which hauled in $264 million Earth dollars in 1990. Twins and Predator are his 2 best efforts in the 1980s, and they would combine to add over $400 million to his domestic receipts resume. All told, Arnold Schwarzenegger has done 30 theatrically released films, which have totaled 3.9 billion clams for a domestic average of $130 million per movie. That is a lot of chiseled butt cheeks in the seats. The Rock flexes his glutes in this round as well, as his franchise-boosting formula has made Jumanji and The Fast and Furious 2 of the biggest properties of this millennium. Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is his all-time breadwinner at $404 million here in the States, and that's followed closely by Fast 7 at $375 million, and then the Jumanji sequel, The Next Level, at $313 million. And speaking of valuable properties, I hear the kids like those Disney animated movies, and Moana also figures into his top 5 box office draws, raking in $359 million back in 2016. His star power is so muscular that he helped steer Jungle Cruise to over $100 million in theaters during a pandemic, and it already got a green light for a sequel. To date, The Rock has done 35 theatrically released flicks that have hauled in $4.64 billion for an Arnold topping average of $136 million domestically. Anytime your pile of cash is bigger than Schwarzenegger's, you're doing something right.
It just happens naturally.
And for Johnson, that something right is timing. Now, he's had big hits on his own without a franchise helping him, but it's only Moana and San Andreas of those flicks that are on his top 10 films in terms of bucks generated. Everything else was an established property before he joined it. Again, they probably needed him more than vice versa, but still, timing is everything. Meanwhile, Arnold established every one of his properties on his top 10 list with the lone exception of Batman and Robin. And I'll be honest, I don't really think we needed that one. I like the freezing jokes. I do cryotherapy every day. but no thank you. Both Arnold and Dwayne have proven themselves worthy of their huge stardom in this round, but in a race this close, I gotta take the one who set the trend for all muscly action heroes to follow. Arnold Schwarzenegger built his most famous franchises from the ground up, and in a time when the Terminators, Predators, and Red Heats of the world were getting nothing but R ratings. So think of all the additional coin he would have generated if those ne'er-do-well kids, like me, could have bought a ticket to the movie we were actually going to see. And by the way, don't try that at home. Don't do it today, you little kids. It was a simpler time back then. And after the movie let out, we had to walk back to school 10 miles uphill in the snow. Arnold wins round 1 and goes up 1-0. Round 2, Tomatometer / Audience Score. Sure, it's easy to get in the gym at 5 a.m. every day, then head to set to shoot for 16 hours straight while being force-fed chicken breast every 45 minutes to maintain your bulk for a gigantic action movie. But will the critics like the result? In the case of Arnold and Dwayne, sometimes. While neither fella has a fresh average on the tomato meter, one of the two does sneak into fresh territory on the audience score metric. You wanna know who it is? You gotta keep watching. It's The Rock. I'm not good at teases. He's fresh at 63% on the audience score. That's thanks in large part to his Disney family fare, like Jungle Cruise at 92% and Moana at 89%. And if it's family you like, then you're going to love his Fast and Furious entries. Fast 5 is at 83%, Fast 6 is at 84%, Fast 7, 82%. Those aren't the actual titles of all the movies, but trust me, they're very speedy and incredibly angry. Arnold might get a little furious at his audience score for only getting him a 48% career average. Yeesh, what did that guy do to you, dear moviegoer? Oh, right, Batman and Robin and Junior, which are at 19% and 22% respectively. But he also gave us all-time audience delights, like Terminator 2 at 94%, Predator at 87%, and the OG Terminator at 89%. Good guy, bad guy. We just love Schwarzenegger and sunglasses, apparently. Even Terminator Dark Fate is at 82% on the audience score. And now we head over to the critical section of percentages, the tomato meter. Many an action star has defeated aliens, terrorists, and Cobra Commander, only to find that the critics didn't really jive with the adventure. And while it's true that neither weightlifter today has an overall fresh average, they both have many a highlight at the top of the tomato meter, including one movie scoring a perfect 100%. You want to know what it is? You gotta wait. I'll just say it. The Terminator! Not the Judgment Day one, the original 1984 flick that put Arnold, Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, and some guy named Jim Cameron into the Hollywood map of stars. It's at 100%, like Toy Story range. The immediate sequel, T2, isn't far behind at 93%, and Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, is nowhere close, but still fresh. It's at 69%. And maybe that number would be in the 90s if Claire Danes had suddenly remembered she can fly a plane earlier in the movie. All told, Arnold's career tomato meter average is only 47%, with his highlights weighed down thanks to End of Days, where he fought hell at 11%, and Batman and Robin, where he fought any temperature above 32 degrees at 12%. Maybe critics just like the heat? The Rock gets closer to fresh for his career thanks to gems like Moana at 95% and Fighting with My Family, where he played The Rock, at 93%. Both Jumanjis and comedies like The Other Guys and Central Intelligence land squarely in the regularly bathed territory somewhere in the 70s. I wanted to spotlight some of the quality yucks he's provided to us over the years because The Rock might be fresh for his entire career if not for comedic disasters like Baywatch at 17% and Be Cool at 30%. Nevertheless, Dwayne, the Tiny Boulder Johnson, has a lifetime average of 52% on the tomato meter. So if we were just doing kids' movies, I don't know, I think Arnold might win. Kindergarten Cop is at 51% on the tomato meter against the Tooth Fairy 17%, but that Tooth Fairy does have Julie Andrews in it, and the hills are alive with the sound of competition. The Rock takes round 2 and ties the game at 1 apiece.
You're one ugly mother...
Round 3, iconic moments. We're into the thick of battle now, and Dwayne Johnson is adjudicating himself very well against a much more experienced opponent. And if you think that Arnold Schwarzenegger has an advantage in a round called iconic moments simply because he's had a 30-year head start on The Rock, you're probably right. But consider this. Johnson is partially responsible for an iconic moment the two fellas share from his breakout action hit, The Rundown. Story time with Uncle Mark. The Rock and The Rundown director Peter Berg had the opportunity to do lunch, which is how fancy people eat lunch, with Arnold Schwarzenegger while production of The Rundown was underway. So this lunch probably involved a crap ton of protein, but also featured a question. Would Arnold consider making a cameo in this movie? Not only did Schwarzenegger say yes, but he was the one that suggested the scene be shot later that day. Within minutes, they're back on set, filming Arnold exiting a nightclub as Dwayne was entering. And Arnold's line in that movie, "good luck in there," is somewhat of a passing of the torch moment. Was he wishing that character good luck, or was he passing the torch of this planet's biggest action star onto Johnson? And in the years since, The Rock has proven himself worthy of that honor. I also bring up the rundown because dude takes down an entire army in it. Sure, Stifler helps, but that's pretty much one guy defeating an armada. However, Arnold can also brag about besting an entire military outfit in Commando. And as cool as both of those epic climactic clashes are, the best part of either one of those flicks is the calm before the storm, when Arnold loads up at a sporting goods store that apparently sells rocket launchers. Ah, the 1980s. That decade featured some of the best moments of Schwarzenegger's legendary career, even if the movies themselves are somewhat forgettable. Red Heat had an awesome bus chase sequence, and Raw Deal has a loading up for the action scene that rivals Commando. The Running Man does hold up freakishly rather well, and big shout out to game show host Richard Dawson for being a good sport. Buzzsaw and Sub-Zero gave Arnold all he wanted in their fight scenes, although I do have to admit, 10-year-old Mark was disappointed when he rented this one from Video Update, only to find that it wasn't the Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero walking through that door. But if it's truly iconic moments you want, then we gotta bring in the classics. The Terminator franchise has some of the best time travel sci-fi action you'll find anywhere, including the police station blowout in the OG and the big rig chase in T2. I also give points to the truck chase in Terminator 3, one of the more redeeming points of that flick. Still, the coolest scene in any Terminator movie for me is Judgment Day, when Sarah Connor sees her Nightmare T-800 and, oh my, what? We have to trust it this time? And prepare your Kleenex for the end of that film. The thumbs up still gets me every time. As for The Rock, I can't decide which ridiculous moment is more iconic. Is it him making an impossible jump that would make David Lee Roth jealous in Skyscraper, or is it when hubris tells him and Sam Jackson that they can make a similar jump in The Other Guys only to splat on the ground? I think I'm going with the slightly more realistic one in The Other Guys. And speaking of zany action, that's why we keep coming back to see Fast and Furious movies in droves. And when The Rock joined the family in Fast 5, the ante was upped considerably. His battle against Vin Diesel's Dom Toretto might have set the record for shattered glass in a fight scene, breaking the previous record held by Die Hard. And he would go on to have such memorable sequences as driving an ambulance onto a drone, tangling with Jason Statham, and then Idris Elba's Black Superman in Hobbs and Shaw, and my favorite scene of all, in Fate of the Furious, when he's racing on a glacier and opens the driver's side door to gently nudge a rocketing torpedo on a slightly different course. Should be viewed in every driver's ed class. Both these gents can do some memorable comedy too.
You know, before this, I used to work in an orange juice factory, but I got canned. Couldn't concentrate. Yeah, they put the squeeze on me too.
Not so much with Junior, but Twins has an iconic moment, and it's anytime Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito are on screen together. The movie sells itself. Just give us a sequel already. The Rock gets a chance to show off his ample charm in Journey 2 when he's teaching Josh Hutcherson how to woo the ladies. All you gotta do, you get a gym membership, you work out every day for 10 years, and you make your pecs jump. You can't see because of this shirt, but I'm doing it. Trust me, it's a piece of cake. Except you can't eat any cake if you want to pull that off. And I may have had way too many birthday parties this year. I know The Rock's character in Central Intelligence can relate to that. Because look, the opening sequence of that movie, it's a fudgy Rock singing in the shower. Is it reductionist Ryan Reynolds and Just Friends? Yes, but it's still comedy gold. Arnold can counter this maneuver by making light of his and Sylvester Stallone's frenemy rivalry in Last Action Hero. It's an alternate universe, and it's cemented in our heads when we see a cardboard cutout at a video store for Terminator 2 starring, you guessed it, Sly Stallone. Arnold does have a sizable advantage in this round, but if it seems pretty even so far, it's because I haven't brought up Predator yet. The CIA had Carl Weathers pushing too many pencils, and we were off and running on an adventure that thrusts everything we love about Schwarzenegger to the forefront. Exciting action? Check out the battle with the rebels, and especially the end fight scene where Dutch goes toe-to-toe in the mud with a badass alien. One-liners? This was 1987, which means peak, cool line after offing a guy, or an alien, Arnold.
Don't disturb my friend, he's dead tired.
The Rock gave a hell of an effort in this round, and I'll award him some points for his awesome battle against Firefly, played by Ray Stevenson, in G.I. Joe Retaliation. That fight lived up to the hype created by my G.I. Joes in my formative years. Or last week. But Arnold's best scenes inspired this chubby kid to get out of the house, go into the woods, make a fort, and wait for, Predator to come take a shot. He never did. What were we doing in the woods besides, getting poison oak? Arnold does win the round, and he goes up 2-1.
1, 2, 3. I think you're right.
Round 4, franchisability. The Rock can't afford to lose another round, but when you hear a word like franchisability, which again I may or may not have invented, you're welcome, Merriam-Webster, you might naturally think of Arnold Schwarzenegger. After all, he's still recognized as the greatest action star that ever walked into a gym. But being a bankable franchise centerpiece takes more than just brawn, sunglasses, and someone else's clothes, boots, and motorcycle. Which of these stars were more fit to build a franchise around during their respective peaks? Let's take a gander. Dwayne Johnson is known as Franchise Viagra for a reason. He injected a bolt of energy into the Fast and Furious films, completely reinvigorating the property, and in doing so, he's now in a new spin-off franchise in that universe. Okay, it's one thing to have a big star appear in a sequel. It's much more impressive to have those movies become so successful that we now have another series of flicks that are successful just to get you more screen time all in the same universe. And that multiplex Cialis isn't limited to just souped-up automobiles. His star power was the best reason to revive Jumanji, which otherwise was a standalone 1990s film starring the incomparable Robin Williams. The Rock, Kevin Hart and company wisely didn't try to outdo Robin. They relied on their own unique chemistry to make a new, appealing elixir that crushes at the box office. Perhaps the most impressive thing about Arnold is that he didn't do too many franchise-type films. Instead, he was the franchise. Didn't really matter if he was a murderous robot or an ancient warrior or a spy masquerading as a computer salesman. We came to the theater to see Arnold do whatever he felt like doing. The Conan film series established him even though they weren't necessarily blockbuster juggernauts, and they set the stage for the Terminator movies to become the preferred tentpole of Arnold. There's been 6 movies to date in that property, with Schwarzenegger at least making some semblance of an appearance in all of them. And to be honest, it seemed as if the franchise has been desperately clinging to him for any sort of relevance lately. It was refreshing to see him and Linda Hamilton back in Dark Fate, but you also gotta wonder why it took us that long to get a decent sequel to 1992's Terminator 2. Oh right, he also made the state of California his franchise. He was governor. That really happened from 2003 to 2011, and naturally, he wasn't focused on Hollywood nearly as much. But he would return to help launch another action franchise featuring fellow old-timers like Sylvester Stallone in The Expendables. We got more and more Arnold as those sequels piled up, but the box office take was a mere shadow of prime-time Arnold. He did launch franchises like Predator and chimed in established series like Batman, but he hasn't returned since, turning down an offer to pop into 2016's The Predator. If one can applaud Arnold for not jumping at the chance to crank out sequels every time he made a successful film, we can also lament what if when it comes to promising starts like True Lies and Junior. Okay, I was kidding on the last one. I maybe could have gone for another Kindergarten Cop, and I'd still line up to see what Jingle All the Way looks like this many years later. Get Arnold, get Sinbad. But again, branching out the comedy seemed more natural for The Rock, and alongside his Jumanji buddy Kevin Hart, they've been able to franchise themselves as a bankable comedic force. Outside the theaters, The Rock has also introduced a very successful line of gym apparel. I own one of his shirts. Wrote a New York Times bestseller. I don't own that. And launched an astoundingly lucrative tequila company. It even sold more than George Clooney's tequila brand. Me personally, I'll stick with Cabo Wabo because that's how deep my Van Halen fandom runs. But Dwayne Johnson has firmly established himself as his own standalone franchise in the wrestling ring and in the business world, and then he makes some movies. And back inside that Cineplex, both of these fellows could have done whatever films they wanted during their lengthy apex at the top of Mount Olympus. And that includes winning Mr. Olympia, which Arnold did 7 times. But the proof is in the pudding, which is a horrible analogy considering neither of these guys have allowed themselves to eat Jell-O in like 70 years. Dwayne has actively worked to get into more franchises, solidifying his lofty perch as one of the last remaining A-list stars. And while Arnold Schwarzenegger may never be passed as the greatest action star of them all, when it comes to franchisability, The Rock edges him out. Johnson wins the round, and we're tied at 2-2.
Stop it.
And now it's time for the wild card round, mano a mano. Sure, we love Arnold and The Rock for their legendary characters who've inspired us all with iconic moments, but more than anything, when we walk out of an action movie, we're not just thinking about what we just witnessed, also on our minds is what's next for this action star or that intrepid hero. And that path will inevitably lead to one question. Who wins in a fight? It's Schwarzenegger. It's Dwayne Johnson. We've seen them battle countless enemies and almost always come out on top. And since neither responded to my request to fight the other person in studio, even though I made it abundantly clear parking would be made available, I came up with an alternate battle plan. by relying on our expert researcher Mark Hoffmeyer. You know that guy. When he's not podcasting about Deep Blue Sea, he's drumming up categories that pits Dwayne and Arnold's cinematic accomplishments against each other, and I get to determine the winner. It's kind of like this whole show. Everyone else does the heavy lifting, and I take all the credit. So let's get to our first heat. The best arm flexing moment. Okay, before you yell it's Predator or nothing, please allow me to remind you that in Fast 7, Dwayne Johnson's character Hobbs was in a cast. And then he flexed his way out. Proper healing is for suckers. Let's get this thing off and save the world. And as impressive as two bulging biceps exchanging pleasantries is, I'm a huge sports fan. And what do sports fans adore? Athletes who play through the pain to get their team a win. Michael Jordan's flu game, Walter Payton breaking the single-game rushing record with a 103-degree temperature, and The Rock flexing his cast off. Put him in the Hall of Fame. He gets the nod here. Best I Gotta Save My Daughter movie. San Andreas has earthquakes wreaking so much havoc on the West Coast that Paul Giamatti was forced to dramatically remove his glasses. Oh, and The Rock had to save various family members, including his daughter. A natural disaster is tough to conquer for sure, but so is an entire army. That's who Arnold has to mow down in order to save his daughter, Alyssa Milano, and get her back on the set of Who's the Boss. Mission accomplished, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is on the board. Best Johnny Knoxville movie? It's a tough call between Arnold's The Last Stand and Dwayne's Walking Tall, but only in The Last Stand will you see the Jackass star blow up a guy with a flare gun. Definitely do not try that at home. Instead, go check out Arnold's post-gubernatorial era comeback. It's a great action flick. Best monster movie. I'll exercise Satan out of this contest because then it's not even fair. I did enjoy Rampage, but come on. The answer here is Predator. Cool locks, invisibility, Carl Weathers is in the movie. Predator wins. I mean, the Predator scrimmage against xenomorphs, for goodness sakes. Best Conan, Hercules, Sword and Sandal movie? Here's where Hoffmeyer and I got into a shouting match that threatened our professional relationship and almost ruined my chances of one day appearing on a Deep Blue Sea podcast. Hoffmeyer thinks The Rock's trifecta of The Mummy Returns, The Scorpion King, and Hercules reign supreme. I side with Arnold's 2 Conan movies and Red Sonja. But since only one of the above movies is a film starring Brendan Fraser, I will begrudgingly give the nod to The Rock here. Can we please make that the next versus? Brendan Fraser versus Brigitte Nielsen. Let's do it. Best kids movies. I had Arnold winning this phase easily on the strength of Jingle All the Way alone. Kindergarten Cop is an even better movie and is icing on the cake. The Game Plan and The Tooth Fairy can't really play with those two, but then I remembered that families like Jumanji, like a lot. And then you also have that action franchise that relies on family. I'm leaning with The Rock here. Best odd pairing film? This is basically a scrap between Twins and Central Intelligence. It's a tie for me, so I'm going to lean towards the movie that set up the template of the 1980s. Danny DeVito checks into the ballgame, hits a big shot, and is now heading back to the taxi stand. He's in a sitcom called Taxi, and you should all check it out. There's a lot riding on our penultimate subcategory in this round, so we had to find a competition that truly brings out the best in an action hero, and that would be their better half. It's the best wife hanging from a helicopter movie phase, and your 2 entries are True Lies and San Andreas. Now, I do want to give props to San Andreas here for a couple putting aside their differences to save a lot of civilians, but after the movie ends, I just don't see those two making it work, like at all. I give it maybe 2 weeks, but True Lies had true love. Even if said truth has been based on a ton of lies that would ruin most relationships, if you need any evidence that this is an endless romance, it's just that simple line that Arnold can deliver as well as anyone. Come on, baby. I fully support them. As a family of spies, give us the sequel. Okay, we'll do one more round, and this is really the ultimate question any dude with a gym membership has ever faced. How much can you bench? Both Arnold and Dwayne have been cast as Hercules, so yeah, they know a thing or two about pumping iron. I mean, Arnold literally stars in a documentary called Pumping Iron, and he's got his own lift named after him. It's the Arnold Press. You start out here with a couple dumbbells, and then you go up there. It makes your entire shoulder cry. But as far as the bench press goes, who can put up more pounds? According to lore, Dwayne Johnson can bench as many as 450 pounds, which means I'm a third of the way there. Can Mr. Olympia top that? Yes. Yes, he can. 500 pounds is Arnold's reported record, and that guy still rolls into Venice Beach Gold's gym to make some gains. I'll see you there, Dutch. Arnold wins this contest, and thus the match, 3 rounds to 2.
This is all mine. It's all me. It's all mine. This is all me.
Thanks for playing.
And there you have it, kiddies. Arnold is still the king, but for how long? Dwayne pushed him to the limit in today's verses, and he still has a ton more movies to make. a gaggle of Fasts, a flock of Furiouses, a fleet of Cruises, a pride of Jumanjis. The sky's the limit. Arnold has slowed down, but just when you think he's done, you'll see him and Sylvester Stallone at some red box breaking out of a crazy high-security prison. Arnold Schwarzenegger wins my vote, but I'm just one person here. One person who recently squatted 225 pounds once. Needed a spot on the second one. Now it's your turn, dear viewer, to register your opinion on this all-important matter. Are you Team Dwayne or Team Arnold? Hit me up on social media with your take at Mark Ellis Live, and make sure you stay tuned right here for loads more quality content from Rotten Tomatoes. My name is Mark Ellis, and I'll be back. Did you smell that line coming? It was pretty obvious, and I'm not apologizing. All right, everybody, chill.
I'll be back.